The Tony Hawk games have to be one of the most recognizable and well-received skateboarding games to ever exist. When somebody says Tony Hawk, they immediately think about any of the video games that people played. Whether that be any of the pro skaters, or the undergrounds, or the wastelands, or the others. Regardless, having the Tony Hawk name branded on the front of a video game came with massive respect. You can't deny that these video games helped inspire people to do some crazy things in life, like grab a board and learn how to skate, or invent tricks. Seriously, you could talk to any skateboarder and ask them why they started skating, and most of the time it was because of the games. While others were inspired to be pro skateboarders and shred like the Hawkman himself, others, like myself, fell in love with the actual game, and it's all because of one aspect: the gameplay. These games always felt like a blast to play, whether that be roaming around the level and finding cool spots to skate, or just going for high scores and watching funny numbers go up. These games were easy to pick up, but extremely difficult to master. And once you do master it, you start realizing that a game with such a simple formula, that is skating around a level and completing goals told to you by a loading screen, can actually hold one of the most complex mechanics known to man. And it only got more complex as the series went on. We're talking about balance depletion, shuffling, butt slaps, why are they even called that? These sort of mechanics, combined with its fast and responsive gameplay, spawned a bunch of gamers who could do some crazy things on a virtual skateboard. And it was all introduced in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. Sure, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 was the start of the PS2 or Xbox games that allowed for its well-known fast gameplay, but it was still pretty raw. In that game, shuffling didn't degrade your trick multiplier, and you could do a backwards manual just by performing a specific backside 180 trick prior to a manual. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 ironed out some of these glitches, and it made for a more complete, more polished game than its predecessor. There are some people who do actually prefer the game from the previous generation, which was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. It improved upon the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater formula, but without being as fast or as overly complex that later games would be. It was a perfect middle ground for players who want to play a skateboarding game with easy to understand controls and simpler gameplay. But as soon as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 released, things would be changing. The game would be upgrading to newer and faster consoles, which meant that the game could be a lot faster than it ever could. It would need a new game engine to accommodate this change. The game released with these consoles, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, was met with high praise from reviewers. This game was good, but the game released after, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, will always be a better game to me. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 nailed its infamous skateboarding engine to near perfection. But before I even touched this game, I played this game first. The PlayStation 1 version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. A lot of people don't know this game exists to this day, and it's all for good reason. The 6th generation of consoles were relatively new at the time, and people were already transferring to newer hardware. But the PS1 version was still made for people who had the older consoles and didn't upgrade to new ones. And it's a weird version. Just imagine if Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for the PS1 and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the PS2 had a baby. I want to talk about this game specifically because 1. It existed at a time when games were being released for both previous and next generation consoles with varying gameplay. And 2. It was developed by Vicarious Visions. Yeah, the same developer behind the Crash Bandicoot trilogy and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake. Their first dip into the Tony Hawk games were Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, both for the Game Boy Advanced. Now, I've never played these games personally, so I can't really comment on them, but according to the reviews and accolades, a lot of people love them. It plays similarly to the original games, with the only differences being played at a top-down view and having stripped-down, yet recognizable levels. Vicarious Visions then worked on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the Game Boy Advanced and the original PlayStation. This was going to be a big task for them, since they would not only have to develop 2 versions of a game that would be on different hardware, but they would also have to develop a Tony Hawk game that would be on a previous generation console. This wasn't new to them though. They had a similar situation when developing Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro for the PlayStation 1. I want to focus on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the PS1, because like I said, the original featured a new engine that dramatically changed how the game was played. It was faster paced, tricks felt snappier, and there were more opportunities to string combos together. But the PlayStation 1 version retained the engine to that of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, so I want to see the major differences this port has compared to the PlayStation 2 version. And for the purpose of this video, I'm going to refer to the PlayStation 1 version as the port, and the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube versions as the original game, just so I don't confuse you or myself. So now, I want to share with you a deep analysis of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the PlayStation 1 and see how it really holds up. The game boots up with its regular splash screens and logos, this time with the added Vicarious Visions team being present. And the dullest main menu ever appears. Here you have your regular game modes: career, single session, free skate, and 2 players. You even have Create Skater and Park Editor here. It's nice to have, but both the Create Skater and Park Editor is sort of copy and pasted from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. So there's not much to say, but it's still nice to have. But let's go play career mode for now and select our Pro Skater. Now, all the regular pro skaters from the original version are here, but now Bam Margera gets a category for himself. This is possibly because the game copies the main menu elements from the PS1 version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which was developed by Shaba Games. That's what I think anyways. The UI elements are in the exact same position between the two games, and since Bob Burnquist wasn't present in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and promoting his own game, he was replaced with Bam Margera. But now that he's back, he gets a spot in the Pro Skater section and Bam gets his own. But let's continue the game and finally start career mode. For those who are unfamiliar, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4's campaign mode was a departure from the original 3 games. You no longer had to collect random letters or secret tapes in a 2-minute timer. Now you are free to explore the map, finding goals that would be in the original career mode at your own pace. To me, the 2-minute timer was so constrictive that I didn't have enough time to explore the map and even find high-scoring places. This sort of exploration translates over to the PS1 version. You can find goal icons scattered across the map and do any of them in any order. These goals involve getting high scores, collecting skate or combo letters, competitions, and doing tutorials. I'll talk about these later, but there's a lot more here than you would actually think. Scattered around the level, you also have stat points, secret tapes, new decks for your skater, and even music tracks you can unlock and listen to while you play. I wasn't able to listen to these tracks because I turned off all the music earlier, because they sound very compressed. But even if you play with the music off, every time you pause and unpause in the game, you can just hear under a second of what song should be playing. So there's that. But as soon as you start moving, you can start to tell that this is a very dated game. The game itself uses the same engine as the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and it's nowhere near as fast or as snappy as the newer generation. Even the PS1 port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 included the revert function as its only feature. Other than that, the game still felt like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. No grind extensions, secret manual extensions, or even double or triple tap variations. The technical enhancements seen in the original version were ginormous when compared to the PS1 version. So Vicarious Visions had to take some liberties and do their darndest to make a Tony Hawk port that better reflected the newer version. How did they do this? Well, they added every gameplay mechanic that was in the newer version. Well, kind of. See, because they were using an older engine, some features would be implemented differently, but they were still there. They would just be explained in some of the tutorial goals, like reverts. They would be one of the first goals you come across, where you just had to press R2 when landing on a vert ramp. And all they did was reuse the switch stance animation. But there would also be some mechanics that the game never explains at all that could be very helpful when playing for high scores or completing goals. And I want to explain all of the new ones featured in the older engine in comparison to the ones seen in the original game. Let's start off with grind extensions. They are performed by pressing triangle in any direction while grinding. Doing so will switch your grind to a different one and also adjust the balance meter a little. You can also switch your grind to a special grind trick, which is something unique that the newer generation didn't have. Because of this, you can alternate special grind tricks in a single grind if you want to raise your trick multiplier quickly. Grind transitions also made you a bit faster when grinding along a straight line. This would alleviate the issue of slowing down while grinding through corners, but at the cost of performing more directional inputs and losing your balance a lot quicker. Oh, also, you can grind on curbs in this game and have more opportunities to combo along the sidewalk. You can't even do this in the original game, something that wasn't introduced until the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation of games. Similarly, lip extensions are performed in the same way, but this time while you're doing a lip trick. It screws with your balance a lot, you can transition to a special lip trick if you wanted, and every time you do it, your skater has to perform the animation of one trick before it goes to the other, so it just looks super jank when you do perform it. But you wouldn't want to perform these since reverts are a better option by a long shot. Spine transfers are here as well, performed by pressing R2 while airing off a ramp that has another ramp behind it. It actually works similarly to how it would in the original game. You can even air out of ramps that don't have another ramp behind it and continue your combo that way if you choose. Nothing really new here, I'm just surprised that it works so well. Manual extensions are also, well, not present in this game. The manual extensions you see in the original game are actually special tricks in the PS1 games, but manual extensions would still be added in the form of what's called a side manual. These manuals can be performed by inputting left then right or right then left depending on whatever side you want to lean towards. It doesn't screw with your balance meter further or degrade your trick multiplier every time you perform it. It does mean that you have to pay more attention to your left thumb trying to balance and perform side manuals if you choose to do so. I rarely perform these manuals while playing the game, but it's there if you really need to increase your trick multiplier and haven't used manuals in a combo yet. The only other con of using side manuals is that it just looks stupid. Speaking of something stupid, one feature in this game that is rarely used and rarely talked about are called dismounts. Dismounts are little reverts intended to continue a combo after performing a wall ride. This is performed by pressing R2 as soon as you land on the ground after performing a wall ride. They're intended to chain a wall ride into a manual without ollieing. Now, in the original game, you can chain these no problem. The combo won't drop and it feels natural. However, in this game, your combo immediately ends as soon as you do a manual. You essentially have to perform a revert after wall riding to continue your combo. The only problem with this is that sometimes you can't anticipate quickly enough when you want to perform a dismount. Like here, for example, I'm in a combo, I overjump a grind, accidentally wall ride downwards, try the manual, and my combo ends. You can never tell whether or not you need to revert from the wall ride because it just happens so quickly. That's why dismounts are only situational and can only be done when you want it to be done. Now, the last two gameplay mechanics are the most broken ones you'll experience. I'll start with the most game-breaking and most used mechanic, at least in my experience. This is called the Super Ollie. This acts as a jump used to air over obstacles like telephone booths or benches. Basically, when you're in the air at any time at all, you can press L2 or R2 to gain a little bit of height and level out. Unlike the other game mechanics I've talked about, I have no idea why this was added. You ollie higher in the PS1 games than the generation after that, so it was just added because why not? You can use the super jump in certain situations where you need a little more height to clear a jump or a gap and continue your combo. You can also use it to jump over barriers, like the main wall you see in the college level. You can use it when you've done a trick in the air that might be too long to land normally. You can air out at any time during the jump. Hell, you can even combine it with the boneless and jump even higher. But that's not all. Holding the L2 or R2 button before ollieing will activate it as soon as you ollie, further maximizing your jump height. It is that broken. This is the only game that features the Super Ollie, and it honestly makes the game stand out a little to the rest of the Tony Hawk games on the PS1. Finally, the last mechanic used by almost everybody who has ever played a Tony Hawk game, the double-triple flip variations. In the original game, double or triple flips can be performed by pressing a directional button and double or triple tapping the flip trick button depending on how many flips you want. It was easy to understand, the timing was very lenient on the button presses, and you could do it anywhere as long as you had enough height to land the trick. In this game, double or triple tap tricks are performed by holding down the D-pad either up, left, down, or right, and double or triple tapping the flip trick button. Now that doesn't sound all that different, but there are a few caveats to this. Number 1, you can only do these with flip tricks. Double or triple tap grabs do not exist in this port. Number 2, you can only perform double or triple tap tricks on a vert ramp. You can't do it on flat ground or off a big kicker. It will only work by airing off a ramp. Number 3, double or triple tap tricks are only limited to 4 tricks: kickflip, heel flip, pop shove it, and the impossible. And the pro skaters that have the front side shove it replacing the impossible as their base flip trick will only be able to perform 3 different double or triple tap flip tricks. And number 4, the timing of the double or triple tapping is lightning fast. So you essentially have to mash the square button as fast as you can, while also keeping track of how many times you pressed it so you don't input more than what you need. On top of that, you might be spinning when you don't want to, so you have to keep track of that too. It's actually one of the hardest tricks to perform in the game, but you'd be surprised to know that it's actually one of the better options to use while airing out of a vert ramp, beating out special tricks. See, despite all the conditions, there is one positive that makes it the most viable option for points. The double or triple tap tricks are just as quick as regular single tap flip tricks, meaning that you could do multiple triple tap tricks in one jump. On top of that, you're likely spinning as well, bringing up your trick total even further. It is one of the most broken and efficient ways to get a ton of points. Okay, that's most, if not all of the gameplay mechanics present. So much was added to this game where it really needed improvements to match the gameplay of the original. But I've rambled long enough about the controls, so let me finally keep explaining the career mode. Every goal is color coordinated to represent their difficulty. Green is easy, yellow is medium, and red is hard. For every level, there are 2 skate letter goals, 2 combo letter goals, 4 high score goals, 3 combo score goals, 1 or 2 tutorial or gap goals, 1 competition goal, 1 or 2 level-specific collectible goals, and 1 game of horse. For horse, you basically get 5 chances total to complete 5 different combo scores, with each score getting increasingly difficult to obtain. If you bail, run out of time, fail to start a trick within the time limit, or fail to reach the score, then you get a letter. It's pretty much the same goal as a pro skater telling you to beat their 3 best combos in a single try, but the horse goal is a bit more forgiving since it gives you 5 tries, but those are all the regular goals. Looking at this list, you can tell they weren't as unique or memorable as the goals present in the original game. There were just too many score-related goals, making the game more tedious to complete. Every time you do complete a goal, you get what's called a goal point, which can be used to unlock more levels. These levels are what you expect from the original game. You have College, San Francisco, Alcatraz, Kona, London, and Shipyard returning. Each level is heavily stripped down from the original's counterpart, and that's likely because of the hardware limitations the PS1 had. But you can still tell which level was which. It just goes to show how distinct and creative these levels were. But London had to be the worst level in this game, purely by visuals. Sure, the developers made it rainy, which some could argue would be more accurate, but they also added this terrible white flash every so often that would act as a lightning strike. It's a cool idea, sure, but in practice it comes off as concussive. But a completely new level was added, called Sewers. The level features 3 different parks for street, vert, and both, all being connected by narrow sewage-flooded railways. It's not a bad idea for a map, but it was very congested and difficult to find good places to continue a combo. But every time I did start a combo, I had no clue where to go next. I would usually just grind along the edges of one of the parks and create a circuit route for myself. The only good thing I could say about this map was that it had some good gaps, but that's it. It was just very average for me. Now, if you complete enough goals in total, you get to unlock pro-specific goals for every pro skater. They don't tell you where these goals are located in the main menu, so you have to guess which level it's in and look at the goal checklist to see if your character's pro-specific goal is there. Not only do you have to find which level is needed for each character, but you also have to find them in the level. And some of them are in far out places or hard to reach areas. Some of the pro-specific goals themselves are actually well thought out and were appropriate for each character. For example, Tony Hawk has to transfer a huge gap in college while doing the 900, or Rodney Mullen has to do an anti-Casper down an insane distance. But then there's Andrew Reynolds and Jeff Rowley's, where you have to do a special trick with a 900 rotation, which feels absolutely lazy. And some of them feel recycled, like Bucky Lasek and Bob Burnquist having to score a specific amount of points in a bowl just because they're vert skaters. I know it's not gonna live up to the creativity of the goals that were in the original version, but at least make the goals make sense to the skater. Having to do a 900 rotation on a vert ramp as street skaters doesn't make sense at all. But once you do complete a pro-specific goal, you unlock that character's movie in the menu, and the pro goals become available to all skaters, which is mostly just getting higher scores than usual. But once you know a clear combo line for every level, these goals get very repetitive. Some levels had collectible pro goals that were kind of unique, but it was really just getting collectibles in a combo. And regarding the movies for each of the pro skaters, it looks like they were just super downscaled from the originals. Some of the movies retained the same length as the original, such as Tony Hawk or Rodney Mullen, while most had to be condensed so that they were much shorter and were able to fit in the PS1's disc. But one of the funniest videos has to be Steve Caballero's. In his video, you get all the PlayStation logos censored like it was one of the other versions of the game. Even though we are on a PS1, so that's kind of weird. You also get to witness Steve Caballero's and Kareem Campbell's videos being spliced together. This is the only movie that it happens to, and it's so jarring that it makes me question if I even played another video or not. It's just one of those things that shows how fast the port was made. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. Complete goals and levels, obtain goal points, use the points to unlock levels, and complete the pro-specific goals for each skater. One thing I do like for beating this game is that the stats, dex, and goal completion transfers from character to character, something that was also present in the original game. I also liked how busted this game felt. There were a few glitches I wanted to look for too, like being able to skate on water in San Fran, or ride up a tower vertically in London. But after hours of playing through many goals and collecting everything that the game has to offer, what do you get? Well, you get a skater named Little Person, and he's dressed like a clown. It's cool, I guess. The PS1 version only had one secret character, and he looks like he would be a character in the carnival level that's in the original game. He could have just been a copy and pasted secret character like Jango Fett. but this new secret character was made instead. He does have his own unique decks and special tricks too. But whatever you do, do not check his stats, or else you'll see. You also get a new level when you complete every goal in the game, which is called Little Big World. For some reason, Vicarious Visions were so infatuated with small things. In this level, you shrink down to the size of a mouse and you get to skate on top of someone's kitchen top. You get to ride on a stove filled with bacon and eggs, inside a dual-sided sink for transition skating, even grind on toast right out the toaster. You can even grind the entire edge of the kitchen table. I think it's a nice addition as a post-game bonus. The only drawback it has is that it's pretty empty. There's not a lot of combo potential other than to just grind around the edge. It's also a pretty small level. Having a level be empty and small is not a good combination. Your only skatable areas are on the kitchen top, and that's pretty much it. You're surrounded by a huge death pit, and you can easily drop in if you don't have a combo planned out, or if you're just going too fast. But I really like the level just because of its novelty. It's like being a kid with a tech deck and using the furniture around you to find lines that would make for an epic combo. As for the other game modes, you have single session and free skate, pretty much a staple in every Tony Hawk game. Then there's two-player mode, something that should also be expected. When you enter a two-player game, you can select from 5 different game modes, that being Trick Attack, Graffiti, Horse, Tag, or Free Skate. Both players can then select their skater and choose to raise or lower stats. This is actually pretty cool, especially if you want to play the game with max stats right off the bat. But from what I played, by myself because I have no friends, you can't add stats to a character that's already maxed out. They would just play normally. And when you do load into a two-player game, you can see that some levels are even more consolidated than the original layouts. For example, if you play a two-player game in the college level, you can see that the clock tower is missing and the entire level becomes more closed in. Even in London, the tower you can wall crawl on completely disappears. Some of the assets you see around the maps get removed too, and that's probably to account for better stability when adding a second player's perspective. Just another limitation for adding a complex PS2 era level into a PS1. But that's really all the game has to offer. There are cheats that you unlock by completing the pro-specific goals, but they're nothing too special, like perfect balance, moon gravity, and slow motion when you're in the air. Stuff you'd see on one of the other Tony Hawk games. However, there is a cheat where you can mirror the entire level if you find every gap in every level. With this, not only are the levels reversed, but so are your button inputs, meaning that a special trick that was originally a right down grab trick becomes a left down grab trick. The only problem with this cheat is that balancing a grind or lip trick is also affected. So you'd have to balance towards the edge of the balance meter instead of towards the middle. Comparing this to the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 version of the cheat, balancing grinds or lips were unaffected, so whether the developers intended this or not, it made for an interesting way to play the game since it really messes with your muscle memory. After completing the game, I can truly say that this is a special Tony Hawk game, considering how many people actually worked on it. The port came out at a weird point in time where the PS2 was just launching and everybody would get their hands on it for the newer generation. But this game allowed for a unique way to play the first 2 Tony Hawk games. Looking back and comparing this game to those 2 PS1 games, you can see that a lot was added to make it feel like a sequel. But then you compare the port to its original game, and you can clearly see that the port just looks like an outdated mess. Nobody even knew this version of the game existed, and that's probably because people were too busy playing it on newer consoles. But I really do think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 for the PS1 had a lot of heart for the small player base it had. Seriously, you only played this version of the game if you didn't have enough money for a PS2 when it came out, but still wanted to play a new Tony Hawk game. The PS1 port was made with an outdated engine, sure, but it still added most, if not all of the gameplay mechanics that were in the original. Don't get me wrong, there were some limitations when making a next-generation video game feel to the previous consoles. Sure, you didn't have any of the minigames, cars, or NPCs that made the game world feel alive. But at its core, this game felt like a true Tony Hawk sequel if the PS2 didn't exist yet. Vicarious Visions went above and beyond what was expected gameplay-wise, and it shows there was a lot of care and consideration put into this game. This would translate later down the road when certain PS1 classics were being remade for the PS4 and the Xbox One. Heck, even after 3 years since Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 initially released, a Steam version of the game would later be made. This came to shock a lot of fans, since Vicarious Visions was absorbed into Activision Blizzard. Even Tony Hawk himself confirmed that he and Activision were working on a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 game. But even though Vicarious Visions is no longer around, I still think that there is hope for another game down the road. This game, with this specific PS1 port, might be one of the reasons why we even got a remake of the series in the first place. If it weren't for the experience they had with this game, along with other Tony Hawk games down the road, we wouldn't have gotten such a polished feeling game in 2020. But with the way things are right now, I feel like the release of the Steam version might be a way to test the waters and see if there's enough interest for another game. Even after Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard and subsequently Beenox, the game studio responsible for so many remasters, hope for a new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game seems closer than ever. I believe that this unique game, this PS1 game, is proof that any developer with the drive and heart can make a huge impact in a beloved game series. Maybe not any developer though. Thank you so much for watching. I've rambled way too long about this game, but I really wanted to make this video too. If you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing. I have a lot of other video games I want to talk about and make videos on, and they don't necessarily have to be Tony Hawk related all the time. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you later.